I am Councillor Susan Downing, Chair of the committee. I will shortly ask all members of the committee to introduce themselves and state the ward that they represent. For members of the public who will be addressing the committee this evening, the procedure for determining each application has been published on the Council's Committee Management Information, along with a notice regarding the broadcast and recording of the meeting. Before we start the meeting, there are a few important housekeeping rules to explain. Speaking at this meeting remains at my discretion as Chair, and only those people who have registered in advance to speak will be allowed to. All participants must keep their microphones on mute until invited to speak by me. This helps to avoid interference from background noise. The Democratic Service Officer will mute all microphones if it becomes necessary. When invited to speak, please keep questions relevant to planning considerations only. Members and officers must turn their cameras on. Members of the public addressing the committee may choose to leave theirs camera off if they do not wish their image recorded. Members and officers must use the raise hand function to indicate that you want to speak. If you do not have this function on your device, please instead type a Q into the meeting chat. The meeting chat is strictly for members and officers' use only. Anyone using the chat without permission may be removed from the meeting. If at any point the meeting becomes inchoate due to technical problems, I will adjourn the meeting whilst the issues are resolved. Should there be any technical issues that affect the broadcast of this meeting, I will again adjourn whilst the issues are resolved. Should any member lose connection during the meeting, they will not be allowed to vote on the application under discussion at that time. I will now open the meeting and hand over to the Democratic Service Officer to announce apologies for absence under Agenda Item 1 and ask each committee member to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Hennigan. Chair, could you introduce yourself in the ward that you represent?
Councillor Susan Downing, Albury Ward.
Councillor Ahmed.
Councillor Zahur Ahmed, representing St Paul Ward, Smithwick.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Councillor Pete Allen, representing the Great Bridge Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Chidley.
Councillor Chidley of Prince's End in Tipton.
Thank you. Councillor Sharon Davis.
Councillor Sharon Davis, Langley Ward.
Councillor Dalu. Councillor Dalu, your microphone's turned off.
Councillor Dalu, Western Central Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Gill.
Councillor Goodish Girl, representing Great Barway View Tree.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Councillor Pam Hughes, representing Wednesbury South.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Mushtaq Hussain for Albury Ward.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones, Tipton Green Ward.
Councillor Mabina.
Councillor Tabisu Mabina, Blackheath Ward.
Councillor Miller.
Councillor Kay Miller, Heatley Heath Ward.
Councillor Ralph.
Yeah, Councillor Sohan, Victoria Ward.
Councillor Sims.
Councillor Sims, Friar Park Ward.
And Councillor Trow. Councillor Trow, your microphone's not on.
I apologise. Councillor Steve Trow, Old Warley Ward.
Thank you, everyone.
Agenda item 2, declaration of interests. Do any members have interest to declare on any of the matters before the committee today?
Councillor Allen has an interest to declare in agenda items 6 and 8. Councillor Allen, can you announce the nature of your interests, please? Your microphone's not on, Councillor Allen.
Okay. Oh,
You're on now.
it only doesn't want to come on. I had this problem before. Let's have a look.
It's on, we can hear you.
Now.
It's
Sorry
on
about
now.
it wouldn't come on. Right, okay. 2 applications of declaring interest on tipped DC 20 64042, Tipton Green, the APR management systems on the Albion Street car parks. In my role as the chair and manager of Supports Community Association, I've been lobbied by a number of the community about this application. So I feel it would not be in my interest or anybody's interest for me to take part. And the other one is DC 20 64149, Tivyale. As I live in Tividale, but I'm also, as the chair of License, seen there could well at some point become a conflict of interests. So I feel I should not take part in that one either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Sims has an interest in agenda item 6. Councillor Sims, could you announce the nature of your interest, please?
Yeah, reference number DC 2064042, the AMPR cameras up in Albion Street in Tipton. I live and work in the area and I've been lobbied by several of the residents around, and I don't feel it's appropriate that I express any in this agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Steph. The same item, DC 2064042. I've had extensive communications with the council regarding the suitability of this planning application. So I've been lobbied by numerous people, but because I've lobbied on behalf of the council, I feel that I should abstain from this item.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, members. Item 3, minutes. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of June moved as a correct record?
Yes.
Yeah.
I move that.
That's Councillor Dallow. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Davies. And are there any objections? I take it none. Do I have the consensus of the committee that the minutes are an accurate record?
Yes, Chair.
Yep.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Agenda item 4, planning applications. Planning application DC/19/63652, proposed 13 2-bedroom apartments and 2 houses, outline application for access, layout, appearance and scale. Amendment to previous refused application DC/19/62665, land adjacent Compton Grange, Whitehall Road and St Anne's Road, Cradley Heath. No members have indicated that they have been lobbied on this application. I take that correct?
Correct.
Yes, Chair, but just to say that we have visited this site previously for that previous application, so I'm sure a number of us are aware of the what we're looking at.
That's right, but these are amended plans for us to consider. John, are there any updates to report on this application, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. We've got several updates. First of all, just need to just have it noted that the agent actually works for Sandwell Council, and of course, for transparency purposes, we want that recorded, please. Secondly, this is an outline application, and further details will need to be approved in the form of a further reserve matters application. However, we need to add to that reserve matters application the issue of appearance. We've not quite got the elevational details that we want, but as I say, that will have to be picked up because a further reserve matters application would follow if members were minded to approve this outline application this evening. And finally, we're looking for an extra condition, condition 13, and that would relate to sign off of the finished floor levels. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We have no objectors registered to speak. We have the applicant Jason Shaw and his agent Stephen Cockayne, who will speak if required. Do any members of the committee have any questions? No?
Councillor Trow.
Sorry?
Councillor Trow.
Councillor Trow.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a very minor point, I'm afraid, but on page 19, and I think it's under 6.3, number 5. I just want to be clear. We are saying, aren't we, that it's that the distance of separation should be a minimum of 30 metres, not a maximum of 30 metres.
John, can I ask you to come in on that, please?
Yeah, of course. Councillor Trow, you are correct. It should read 30 metres. That's allowing for the change in levels as well, Councillor. And as you can see, by way of further elaboration, the report does clearly state that there is a 33 metre gap. So the separation distance is above the minimum we would be looking for.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Have a hand up? No? No. In that case, then, may I ask a member of the committee for a motion, please?
Yes, Chair. Because the applicant. Can you hear me?
We can, Councillor Dallow, yes.
Yeah, because the applicant has reduced the number of dwellings from 19 to 13 and done whatever we want, actually, almost. So I move the application be approved.
Can I have a seconder, please? Oh, Councillor Allen, you.
Yes, Chair, I'd second that. With the additional to the number 13 added to it as well, the conditions. So yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Democratic Services to take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Are you voting? So there's a motion on the table to approve the application as set out in the report and as per the amendments that have been published this afternoon with an additional condition.
I do.
How do you vote?
For.
Against? Thank
for.
you.
Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed, are you for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Allen, for.
For.
Councillor Chidley, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Sharon Davis, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Dallow, move the motion. Councillor Gill, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Hughes, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Hussain, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Jones, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Miller, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Sims, for, against or abstain?
For.
And Councillor Trow, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you everyone, that application is approved.
Thank you. We now go to item 5, planning application DC/19/63818, retention of single-storey rear extension and new staff and visitor parking area, 121 Witton Lane, West Bromwich. No members of this stage have indicated that they have been lobbied on this application. Is that correct? Has anyone been lobbied? Councillor Jones.
Yes, as the wife is a councillor, she's been lobbied on behalf of objectors, but I haven't directly.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. John, do you have any updates on this report, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I've got several updates, members. First of all, you may recollect that this application was presented at March's committee this year, but we actually deferred making a decision because at the time we needed more information relating to highway issues. It also afforded the opportunity then for a visit to take place, but clearly we've been thwarted with visits due to coronavirus. That said, because we can't visit the site currently, as well as the Street View link within your papers, members, the applicant and agent have also included some photographs just to so that you can see the site in its context and see the surroundings there. This is the photographs are actually up on the screen now, relate to the rear of the site, and on the photograph there you'll see in the bottom right hand corner a sort of metal, I'll use the word shack for want of a better description. That building has been removed and a new extension built in its place, which is a larger building. But the point of that photograph as well was to show that the applicant had already removed some soil and altered the levels at the rear of the site, which some of the neighbours had raised in their objections. That's just to put it into context there. One final update, members, as well. We've had a further submission from an objector today. He's made his own detailed comments on the transport statement that the applicant had submitted. So we've got that available as well to share with members if you so wish. But so if with that photographs there, you can see, looking over the fence, the blue structure. You're pretty much looking at the extension that's been built, because this is a retrospective application seeking to retain that blue structure there at the rear of the premises. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John.
Chair, we've got Lee Cope wishes to speak.
Yes, Mr. Cope, I believe you wish to speak. You have 5 minutes.
This is the objector, Chair.
Mr. Cope is the objector. Are you there, Mr. Cope?
He seems to be having problems with his mic.
He's not taking his mic up.
It is on, but he's having problems.
Oh, right. Okay. I was going to say, can we...
move on to the applicant, Chair. Is the applicant present?
Right. Mr. Cope, we'll go to the applicant first. and come back to you when you've sorted your problems with your mic out. The applicant's agent, Mr. John Jowett. Would you like to speak, Mr. Jowett?
Thank you. Hello, Chair. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Eurobrass moved into the existing industrial unit on this site in January 2020. It's been on site for over 10 years. Most of the objections to this application relate to the operation of the premises that were already there. Prior to Eurobrass, there have been works on this site since before the Second World War. The most recent housing development adjacent was built at the turn of the century to the east. So all adjacent residents were therefore fully aware that there were commercial premises adjacent their houses before they moved in. Now, the company doesn't manufacture on site. It's a brass stockholder. It's basically a warehouse. And the purpose of the small extension is to enable the installation of a racking system which will conform to modern standards and allow for more efficient operation of the site. So the proposal is for a relatively small extension to the existing building, given that it's replacing an existing building as well. And any new impacts will, by definition, be extremely limited. Most importantly, the proposal will not result in any change to the number of staff employed or to the number of deliveries. As an extension to the existing building, the building subject to this application is of the same height and design as the existing and constructed of the same materials. So there can't really be an objection on the grounds of design. As you can see, existing buildings are set away from and at a much lower level than surrounding houses. So there's no real issue in respect of privacy, overlooking, light, outlook, or overshadowing. Again, any increase in noise and disturbance to residents as a result of the extension will be extremely limited compared to the existing use. If anything, you'll see that the building will act as a shield to some houses. Any loss of trees is a result of removing the spoil heap on the site, and you've seen photos of that. Now, I note the very late objection in respect of highways. We've had a look at that with our highways consultant. And whilst the number of trips generated by the existing B8 use is higher than the average generation for warehousing, as stated, the proposals themselves will not result in any change to the number of staff employed or to the number of deliveries. The parking layout proposed as part of the application will actually provide a betterment to the current situation. And as the objector notes, government guidance confirms that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impact on the road network will be severe. This isn't the case. I therefore hope you will allow this application and support local business and local employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jowett. Mr. Cole, are you there now?
Try another device, Chair.
Chair, if we just carry on a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
If we've got his telephone number, we can dial him.
We'll just hold there for a couple of minutes to see if we can get hold of Mr. Cope on the telephone. Is there anyone in the planning department? Oh, right.
Just turn it on, Chair.
Just turned it on. Yeah. John, is there any of your staff that would have Mr. Cope's telephone number so as we can contact him?
Chair, yes, the case officer, Carl Mercer, well, in fact, Carl's just put his hand up. So I'm sure Carl can endeavour to try and contact Mr. Cope. But Carl, do you want to add anything to that? Carl, you're muted. We can't hear you.
He's not muted.
Not muted.
No.
We've got a problem.
Chair, do you want to adjourn the meeting?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can now, Carl.
I've just attempted to contact Mr. Cope, who was listening to the proceedings, but he's having technical difficulty. I do have his contact number. If you want me to forward it to Steph, do you want me to forward that to you now?
Please, yes.
Okay, give me a second and I'll do that.
Thank you.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Hello, Mr. Cope. Mr. Cope, we're still having problems hearing you.
I want to adjourn the meeting for a few minutes and we'll try and...
We will adjourn the meeting for a
Unknown
few
participant
minutes.
is now exiting.
Thank you. We will adjourn so we can see if we can sort the problems out.
Unknown participant is now joining.
Your microphone on again. Your microphone's off at the moment. Mr. Cope, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Cope, you're having some issues.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Where's the speaker on this laptop? He's gone. Yeah. So I phoned you from my mobile phone. Okay. So you need to mute your microphone in the Teams meeting because that's what's causing that screeching sound. Sorry. Okay, can you hear me now? If you just come out of the Teams meeting and we'll just do it on loudspeaker like this. Okay, but how can I see? I've only referred to the PowerPoint that you're going to show, which I've sent through, so I need to be physically on Teams to do it.
He's got to turn the sound up on his device. See on the laptop? No, on his device. Have you got a different device that you can try then? Because at the moment we've put the content.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Jowett, Mr. Cope is having some problems with his device. We are putting him in contact with our IT guy, who is contacting him to sort it out. So we are deferring this just till a little later on in the meeting, and we'll come back to this application. I'm sorry for the problem, but I think it's the best option. Thank you. Right, members, we'll now proceed to item 6. Planning application DC/20/64042. Proposed retention of 2 car park automatic number plate recognition ANPR management systems and DC/206685A retention of 4 car park sites, management signage, 9 signs mounted on lighting columns 12 signage poles and 12 wall building signs. Car park, Albion Street, Tipton. Now we do have 2 applications on this, so we'll take the first one, DC 264042. So we'll need to vote separately on these. Councillor Allen and Sims have declared an interest in these applications.
Do you want us to leave and rejoin after the end of this?
Please, Councillor Allen, Councillor Sims, if you can leave the meeting for now. And Councillor Jones.
Chair, I did mention that I'd lobbied the council extensively regarding this matter, and it's appropriate that I take no further part.
Right, thank you. If you'd like to leave the meeting then, please. Right. So any other members have been lobbied on this application or these 2 applications? I'll take that as no. John, do you have any updates to report, please?
Right. Yeah, thank you, Chair. No specific updates as such, Chair. I'm glad you mentioned it is 2 separate applications, and I think there's been a slight confusion regarding the proposals. I mean, first of all, we have the one application for the 2 camera systems. That relates to the 2 car parks, which my colleague will show you on the plan. Yeah, it's the one where it says Kiddies Playhouse. There's 1 camera there, and the car park to the north of it that's been circled where it says the Co-op. There are 3 cameras there. They're the 2 sites, as I say, that relate to the camera application. Now, the other 2 car parks are included on the second application for signage. There's various signage on those sites, but we just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We have no objectors or applicant agent registered to speak. So do we have any members with questions for highways or any other officers? Any questions from the committee, please? No questions?
Yes, Councillor Ahmed.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on objections regarding, I mean, when you put this in system place, the people are enforced to park on the streets. Do we have any consideration or any, action in plan to consider that within this planning application?
Do we have anyone from our highways to answer that question, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Simon. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So I've had some technical issues. Just I'm on a spare laptop, so I've arrived late today. I do apologise. Quite understood. Was it something with the objection about?
Yes,
car?
basically I mean, this system is in place, but I mean, when people don't want to park in the car park because of charges and the system and everything, for whatever reasons, and they're going to be overflow of car parking or traffic going into different streets or areas within locally. So have you put anything in place, to cover that? Is it part of this or not?
Not to no form complaints about this and about actually about retaining ANPR cameras. And so,
Simon, can I just Simon, can I just ask you to turn your camera off, please, because we're having difficulty with hearing you. You keep breaking up. Taking your camera off, we may be able to hear you better. Thank you.
Okay, does that sound better?
It is, yes, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor, I understand the application is for simply retaining the AM and the sites. It's not about determining whether they should be able to charge or not. Therefore, that gives us little opportunity to mitigate anything against the application. However, if members of the public do formally let Highways know, then we'll go through our normal process of investigating if there are parking restrictions required on the street. That's as much as we can offer them at the moment.
Thank you.
Councillor John Baker. Oh, John, you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on Simon's point, yes, I mean, Simon is quite correct. This application is purely about the retention of the cameras, retention of signage. We can't look at the way the car parks are run as such. Just to make it clear, Councillor Ahmed, and just to pick up on your concern, the charging only starts after 2 hours. If you want to use the shops, the businesses in Tipton Town Centre, you do get 2 hours for free. It's trying to strike a balance, isn't it? Because the problems that some of the businesses have had is that the car parks, because of their very close proximity to Tipton Railway Station, have been just parked up all day with commuters, which has left people using the businesses struggling for parking spaces. So it's just trying to achieve that balance between, not causing existing on-street parking, well, not exacerbating existing on-street parking problems, but and also trying to maintain sufficient parking for the businesses to operate within the town centre as well.
Any further questions from members?
Councillor Dallou's got his hand up.
Councillor Dallou.
Yes. What would the charges? Are they going to charge same as we charge at the council car parks, or they're different from them?
John, can you answer that one?
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. Chair, I can't answer that. I'm sorry, Councillor Dallou, I can't answer that question because the application isn't about the charging. We can't discuss. We can't discuss the operation of the.
I sent in a thing for them to detail all the different issues they've got.
Can you switch your mic back on, John?
Okay, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Councillor Dallou, I don't know the answer to your question, but the reason for that is we're not here to discuss the charging or the way the car parks are being run. The applications are purely for the retention of the cameras and the signage.
Councillor Trow, Chair.
Councillor Trow, you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, it may not be a question. My reading of the report is that it's fairly categorical and unambiguous in making clear that the matters that have been raised in objections are not actually material considerations for this committee as a planning decision, and it's also clear that under the terms of the lease with the council, there's any dissatisfactions with the way that the parking arrangements are made, or fees or fines or whatever is applied, isn't controllable by the lease, which of course equally isn't a planning matter. It seems, unless officers can indicate to me any other considerations that we should be discussing here, I'd like to move approval of the recommendations of the retrospective permissions in both cases.
Chair, I'd like to second that.
Councillor Sharon Davies, I believe.
Councillor Davies, seconder. Right, members, in that case, can we then go to vote on DC/20/64042, retention of 4 car parking sites, management signage, signs mounted on lighting columns, and 12 signage poles, and 12 wall building signs. So can you please indicate, well, Stephanie will go through the voting on 64042.
Thank you, Chair. If you're happy, I'll take the vote for both at the same time if members are happy. Seems that there's both applications have been moved for approval. So I'll start with you, Chair. Are you for, against or abstaining in respect of both of these applications?
For.
Councillor Ahmed, are you for, against or abstaining in respect of both of these applications?
For.
Councillor Allen is out of the meeting at the moment. Councillor Chidley, for, against or abstaining on both?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Sharon Davis seconded the motion. Councillor Dallow, for, against or abstaining on both of these applications?
For.
Councillor Gill, for, against or abstaining on both of these applications?
For.
Councillor Hughes, for, against or abstaining on these 2 applications?
For.
Councillor Hussain, for, against or abstaining on both applications?
For.
Councillor Jones is out of the meeting at the moment. Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstaining on these applications?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Trow moved the motion. So those votes are both carried and both of those applications are approved, Chair.
Right, thank you.
We need to get Councillors Allen, Jones and Sims back into the meeting.
Right.
Just hold on.
Okay.
I think what may be better is let them know just to do a microphone check, yeah, and then go.
Right, we'll just wait for the members to come back into the meeting.
So really,
Hello?
that's why I need to go through that process. Right. Thank you, James. Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello?
We can hear you, Mr. Cope.
Ah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Right, shall we return? Yeah.
Allen. Yeah, I think Councillor Allen's back in as well, isn't he?
Right. That's Councillor Sims, Allen and Jones.
I'm back.
I am back.
Councillor Allen's back. Councillor
Jones is back.
We've got Councillor Jones and we've got Councillor Sims back as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. In that case, then we'll return to DC/19/63818. Retention of single-storey rear extension and new staff visitor parking area, 121 Witten Lane, West Bromwich. We have Mr. Cope now. Mr. Cope, I believe you want to speak and you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, there should be a slide thing that you're going to put up on the screen that I've sent through.
The officers will see to that.
Yeah, there should be before that. I emailed in some pictures as well.
Yes, we've seen those.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll start off by referring to my concerns. I'd emailed in and objected to this planning application mainly as a result of safety. We live opposite the premises. If the committee look at the figures that I'd sent in, if you look at figure 1, which I believe you should all have, figure 1, which was figure 1 that shows the vehicles manoeuvring into the site. They have problems manoeuvring into the site because they have to try 2 or 3 times to go backwards, forwards to actually get into the site. The committee should also have a picture, because again this was promised, of an outcome of an accident, because I think one day what had happened was an HGV vehicle had actually collided with a lamppost actually outside the house. And so if you have like a vehicle and it's the HGV vehicle and it's actually going into a lamppost, and the lamppost is going to fall over and it's actually opposite your house and you can see this, you do worry that this lamppost is actually going to fall into your house or on your car, or even actually hit a pedestrian. And there's a picture I've sent through, and I'm hoping the committee should actually have that picture of that sort of occasion. Now, these issues, or these potential issues, have got worse over time. They're getting more sort of prevalent and more they happen more and more often. Now, also, I showed a figure 3. In figure 3, there's examples where the HGV lorries, when they actually go into the site, what they do is actually either park in front of the drive, and again that's shown in figure 3, and basically blocks off access to vehicles outside. So normally what would happen before a vehicle went into the site, they would normally park on the road or park on the road, and basically the road is really used, or outside the public highway is actually used as some sort of yard, or it's actually effectively used as some sort of yard where basically the vehicles are just sort of blocking access. But then on figure 4, I've got an example where sometimes some vehicles actually choose not to manoeuvre into the site because they actually feel it's too dangerous actually to manoeuvre into the site. And in figure 4, there's an example of where what they do is actually park the vehicles on the road, on the pavement, and what they actually do is they get a forklift truck and actually deliver into the site. And that and basically there's an example on figure 4, if you look carefully, where when a delivery actually happened, all the sort of copper piping actually fell right into the road and actually went across the road. And there's another example on figure 4 where what they're doing is they're actually sort of parking on the pavement. That actually prevents what people have to do. Some people, if they're walking or with dogs, which happens more often now because of the COVID crisis, what they have to do is have to walk around into the road while vehicles are going up and down the road. They have to walk into the road while vehicles are going, and that's actually a potential risk of an accident actually happening. And again, in figure 4, you've just got a trailer just parked by itself in the middle of a road, like a sort of delivery yard. So effectively, the road outside our house is really done as a delivery yard. And effectively, we've had examples of numerous times where the lamppost has actually sort of fell over and they've had to replace it.
Mr. Cow,
hello?
Can I just come in there? I appreciate you have problems with highways leading onto the site, but the actual application is for retention, retention of the building on site. We do have to be specific.
I've actually put that in the application, Chair. I've actually said as a result of this building, there's actually going to be an increase of 10% area of basically vehicles, and as a result of that happening, that's going to increase the number. And I've actually I've actually done another report based on the transport node, where that's actually going to effectively increase by about 10% the number of vehicles actually going into the site. Now, what the company did, the council in March postponed the meeting because they wanted to secure improvements, RE safety improvements, because the council actually are concerned about safety. And what they wanted the Eurobras to do is actually to provide some sort of reassurance that safety would be improved, because what's going to happen is, as a result of this building, there's going to be increased vehicle use into the site. And so what then happened was Eurobras actually came back and actually presented a transport note to the company, and I've actually looked at that transport note and provided a report which I've actually given to the committee, which basically says, or what their argument is on the transport note is they've looked at 3 companies, or is it Mayer Brown, have looked at 3 companies around the UK, And what they've actually said is on average, per 100 metre squared of B8 warehousing, you should have about 2.157 vehicles using the site. If you scale that up to the warehouse using that you've got already, which I've actually detailed in the report that the committee should have, that should then give about, it comes out to be, I think 20, I think I listed it. I can go, if you go to the document that I've actually attached, let me just refer, it's on page, yeah, it basically should, if you scale that up, it's on point 4 of my report, where it should result in 38.2 and 29.7 vehicle uses into the site. Now, if you look at the data provided by Mayor Brown and Eurobras, the actual data says that really that they're actually having 54, 65, 46, 48, 50 on each day. You're getting more vehicles than are expected that are using the site currently. So actually this transport proposal, which is going to increase 10% the area into 10% B8 area into the factory, thereby increasing traffic, thereby increasing the potential risk of accidents.
More than 5 minutes.
No,
okay, all right.
He's not taking the easier, so Chair, he's on 6 minutes now.
Right, Mr. Coe. Okay. Right, members. Do members have any questions for any of the parties that have spoken on this application? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. The photos that, or I think you said photos, Mr. Cope, the objector had put, I haven't seen those in the pack or have been demonstrated today. I know Whitton Lane, and I know I was down there last week, and it's a very narrow road in the first instance. But I haven't seen the photographs or anything that purports to show the traffic concerns. And if we can get those up, that might give us some insight.
Yeah, please, because I've actually sent those through, and they were promised to be sent in the committee pack prior to the meeting.
They have, Carl, can you have access to those photographs? Can we have them on screen for members, please?
I'll put them up now, Chair, okay?
Right, thank you.
They're part of the original objection, so they came in as part of the original objection to the application. Hang on.
I'm happy to answer questions about those photos, because obviously the committee have not actually have had sight of those photos prior to the meeting.
Well, that's what we're arranging now, Mr. Cowell, for the photos to be put on screen for members to see them.
Yeah. I would have thought that you'd have had my objections on file as well. The committee would have had, but obviously not. Okay, so do you want me to talk through them or not? It's up to you. So figure 1 shows how they manoeuvre in, and the road, as I think suggested by Councillor Jones, he said it's not wide enough, and that's what I've been trying to say. And there's evidence, and this just happens a lot. It doesn't. I'm not deliberately sat out all day waiting for these things to happen. This happens virtually day in, day out. And basically, as far as I'm concerned, it's an accident waiting to happen. Figure 2, you've got a banksman there. You've got a lamppost which has been damaged. It doesn't look good. So basically an accident's waiting to happen. That's actually happened a number of times. And so what happens is the lamppost gets knocked over. We complain to the council, they put it back up again. Nothing happens after that. Figure 3, parking on the road. So before a vehicle gets into the warehouse, they've got gates that are closed. They have to park up onto the road, and then they go in and they log in their delivery. So they park up on the road, either on our side or their side. Okay. You can see why I'm angry. This was 4, which is what I was trying to describe earlier. If you look here, you've got to look very closely. So if you zoom up the picture, what's happening here is some delivery drivers are really conscientious. And what they do is they decide, rather than actually going into the site, they say, well, I'm not going to deliver here. Why? Because it's too dangerous to actually manoeuvre into it. So what happens is if they park upon the pavement, So you can't get pedestrians or old ladies or ladies with babies going across. And what happens is they actually deliver straight from the road. And if you look at the bottom, you can actually see on that occasion, which has been photographed, copper pipes have just been spilled by the delivery vehicle, which is a massive health and safety concern, and actually are into the road. Okay. And then you've got, again, lower down on figure 4, there's another example. No, it's above that. There should be another example, I think. There's another example just lower on that page. You need to go down that page. So if you look there, again, another example of a vehicle parked on the road. So parked on the pavement. So if you're a pedestrian, you have to walk all the way around that vehicle out into the road. And I've seen people do that, whether it be a lady with a baby or people walking their dog, and you've got traffic going backwards either or there. So if you speak to Councillor Jones, he's familiar with that road. He will tell you that's quite a busy road. Next one down is the final one. And again, what they do is, I said earlier, they treat it like a delivery yard. So if you look here, that is just, that's a public highway. They've just left half of the vehicle. So it's like a double, big, massive HGV vehicle. They've basically just left it just like as basically as a work sort of yard. So effectively for me, they've actually the road is actually effectively treated like a works yard. It's causing a blind spot.
Right, and thank you, Mr. Cow.
And it's also, if you look around the corner, it's causing a blind spot if you were to go around from the other highway. Okay.
Right, thank you very much for that. Councillor Jones, have you any further questions?
No, I'm just shocked. I'm sorry. From the evidence I've just seen, as I say, there is an accident waiting to happen. I'll keep a question for the officers, if I can, please.
Yes.
Do you want it now or wait to see anybody else?
No, you ask it now.
Okay, John,
please.
and highways officers, obviously that is shocking, what we've seen regarding the entrance and egress into this accommodation. Quite clearly, it's showing that we have serious highways concerns here. And the highways, and I'm just wondering about the planning enforcement that can be taken. If not, if they're on the highway and unloading lorries on the highway and parking lorries on the highway, surely that can't be acceptable in the terms that is suitable for highway safety and also for a planning concern. I also note that the planning officers, the highways officers are saying that there are lorries having to back in and back out of the site in the first instance. So, from a highways point of view, and looking at those photos, what are we intending to do about what is clearly very serious matters?
Sorry. John, would you like to come in on there, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and answer part of Councillor Jones's question there. I mean, clearly the pictures do create a serious scenario there, don't they, in terms of highway safety? You're quite correct, Councillor Jones. From a planning perspective, I'm sure my colleague Simon Chadwick, I see his hands raised, can comment on the highway enforcement. We did actually look at the planning history to this site, and the site is, I think, as the agent quite rightly alluded to, is a very long established business, and the use is long established, I should say. And from a planning perspective, there aren't actually any controls, because we were looking to see if there were controls as to where deliveries should be taking place, the times of those deliveries and so forth. And because it is quite a long established industrial site, there aren't those controls from a planning perspective. I think also members just need to bear in mind, and it's certainly by no means dismissing the concerns raised by the objector or yourself, Councillor Jones, but the use itself is not up for discussion this evening, right? What we're focusing on is the extension at the back, and we have to ask ourselves that the extension, bearing in mind that there was an existing building that was demolished. The new extension has been built. It creates an extra, I think it's 148 square metres of floor area. we need to ask ourselves, will that extra 148 square metres sufficiently exacerbate the problem to warrant refusal? Now, it's a judgment that clearly members need to take on hearing all the evidence this evening. The agent has categorically told us that there won't be any increase in the numbers of deliveries. There's no increase in staff being employed there. It's purely a kind of overspill storage area. But I'll let my colleague Simon come in now on the highways side of things, please.
Yeah.
Simon?
Thank you. I think it states in the report way do have concerns about the existing manoeuvrability into the issue we have as a highways authority. We have limited enforcement powers on the highway. In fact, all the issues that have been discussed tonight relate to police enforcement. So all we can do is pass on those concerns and for police help in these situations. In terms of HGVs, like in terms of delivering with the cliffs, that is a police enforcement issue. And as much as I wish we did as a highways authority have powers, we have no more power than anyone to prosecute that. So it is the police force issues that are there with the way the operation is at the moment. And I don't know what much else to say with that. Going on to the application itself, it's not operate into that. The transport statement we did on staff that the car park that's been provided is for existing staff, and therefore, if there's no more deliveries, there's very little we feel that we can object to really if there's no additional deliveries or any increase in staff there. So at this particular application itself.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any more questions from members to officers?
Hello, can I respond to some of the concerns, if that's okay? That's the objector, by the way.
Sorry, that's the objector trying to speak.
Right. Now, the objector and I'm sorry, Mr. Cow, you've had more than 5 minutes. It's for questions only now from members. So
okay,
I think
I'm happy to take their questions. Okay.
Yes, that's fine. I'm just asking members if there are any more questions to the objector.
Councillor Dallow and Councillor Trent.
Councillor Dallow?
That was mic off.
Councillor Dallow, you need to take your mic off.
Yeah, it's for Simon Hackett. Is there or John Baker? Is there any possibility of put the condition on so that rather than reversing onto the road, they can reverse into the building and they come in the front, come on the front forward gear?
Chair, if I may answer that question.
Please, John.
We can't do that in this instance, Councillor Dallow. I appreciate the sentiment and I appreciate the reasons why, but we can't do it. As I say, we're not here to discuss the use of the site as a whole. We're only here to look at the addition of the extension at the rear of the existing building. So it would be unreasonable to try and control the use as a whole through conditions really where we're only here to deal with an extension to the rear of the main building.
Councillor Trow, I believe you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that helpful, comment, John, on exactly what our competencies are in this matter. It's just a procedural point in a way, Chair, but the normal process would be for the objection to be heard first and then for the applicant's agent to respond.
Yes, but the can I just say, Councillor Trout, the objector was having some technical difficulties. That's why we adjourned.
Yeah, no, I wasn't questioning what we did. It's absolutely right. All I'm saying is, I think I might ask a question of the applicant on behalf of the applicant to give us some indication of whether what we've seen the evidence of represents a general pattern, whether there is any mitigation effort that is ever made to ensure that those sorts of occasions don't occur as a routine. Why we've seen the evidence today, and whether that is something that the company might be able to address. Now, I realise that's not material. The answer to that question is not absolutely material to this consideration of this application. But I do think it would be, in context, an opportunity for us to get a fuller picture of what the situation is.
Councillor Jones. Shall we go to the objector first? Mr. Jowett, would you like to answer that question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in response to Councillor Trow, I'm in a similar position, to be fair, to your officers. My job is to represent the position as regards the planning application itself, which has been explained results in no increase in deliveries and no increase in the number of staff. I do appreciate and understand the issues that have been raised by the objector, and I do sympathise with them. And I think there is an opportunity here for me to raise those points with the company. I'd be very happy to do so. Clearly, there is the potential to use banksman as available. It is a narrow access, but there is nothing more that we can do other than try to ensure that safety is preserved as much as possible in coming in and out of that site. And as I say, I'll be very happy to pick that up with the company itself. I'm sure they'd like to help if they can.
Right, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. It's a question to John and the other officer. We talk about the loss of on-site with this 140 square metres of loss to warehousing. Surely that would increase the limited amount of space that would be used to come into and out of the building. And looking at the, as that stopped the double-rigged Pantechnians lorries actually accessing the site. So by the very nature of this building go up, has that stopped the usage of the yard, and that's why they're unloading on the street?
Carl, can I ask you to answer that question, please?
Yeah, no problem, Chair. Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't the building. The extension wasn't built on an area that was previously used as manoeuvring space. It was largely built on an area that an embankment area that has been removed and kind of replaced with this area. Although staff parking has been increased, there's the situation in terms of manoeuvrability doesn't really change from what was there previously. And as you know, I'd echo the comments of John and the agent there, John Jarrett, in that we can only look at what is being proposed. Like I said, the report doesn't necessarily shy away from saying that there are those issues. It's just how material they are to this application. In this case, just to rectify things as well, I think it was 186 square metres in the report that they were adding. But as Simon Chadwick, our highways engineer, has pointed out, highways don't seem to be overly concerned about that the impact of that additional area. And as I've said, it doesn't make a great difference to the manoeuvrability area within the site. We had considered increasing manoeuvrability within the site. That would, to be honest, may well include removing more of the embankment. which is in my opinion probably unreasonable on the applicant to be able to have to do that, bearing in mind that we're talking about existing issues and nothing that's going to be necessarily exacerbated by this application. So yeah, that's sort of my take on things. Thanks.
Right, thank you, Carl. Any further questions to the applicant or objector? In that case, then we can move to a motion. May I ask a member of the committee for a motion, please?
Councillor Allen and Councillor Jones.
Councillor Allen?
Yes, Chair. Obviously, we're saddled with something of, let's say, a bit of an unsatisfactory situation that is out of our hands, and as historically it's been there. And from focusing on what we're here to look at tonight on that extension, I would like to propose a recommendation as laid down. And obviously, we seek some dialogue with the company in terms of if they can improve the way they handle their traffic flow. Thank you, Chair.
If you can respond.
No. Right, Councillor Jones, can I have a seconder?
I'm not intending to second. I will vote against it for the very reason that the site isn't being used to its maximum potential because of the unloading of lorries on the highway. They're definitely not using the facility that they're actually proposing, and I'll vote against Councillor Allen's proposal, so I wouldn't second that.
Right.
I second that. Councillor Mustafa saying. I'll second Alan.
Right.
What was that? Sorry, I missed that, Chair.
That was Councillor Hussain seconded it.
Seconding Councillor Allen's
Allen's.
motion to approve.
That's right. Councillor Trow.
Yeah, Chair, I'd only signalled it in order to second Councillor Allen's vote, but that's been
right.
done.
Okay, thank you. Right. In that case, then I'll pass it over to Stephanie to do the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a motion on the table to approve the application as per the recommendation in the report, which states that planning permission is granted subject to a condition requiring the parking spaces to be provided within 3 months of the date of the permission and being retained thereafter. Councillor Downing, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Ahmed, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Allen moves the recommendation. Councillor Chigley, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Sharon Davis, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Dallow, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Gill, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Hughes, for, against, abstain?
Against.
Councillor Hussain seconded the motion. Councillor Jones, for, against or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Miller, for, against or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Sims, for, against or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Trow, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. That vote is carried, Chair. So the application is approved.
Right, that vote is carried. Mr. Cope, can I just say we are sympathetic to your predicament. Can I ask you to contact your local councillors that can offer you some support and hopefully bring in the police to see if anything can be done? Mr. Cole,
Hello,
please.
can I respond to that? I've basically put my concerns to the committee, I've basically said there's an accident waiting to happen. In the report, I've also talked about increased use, but
Can
it
I
is an
just-
accident waiting to happen. No, it is an accident waiting to happen.
Can I-
I've put my concerns across, and that's as much as I'm going to say. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay then, Mr. Cowell. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Right, on to our next application, which is planning application DC/20/64077. Proposed 10 new dwellings, vacant land off junction of Britannia Road, Greenwood Avenue, Rowley Regis. At this stage, no members have indicated they've been lobbied. Is this correct? Has anyone been lobbied? No?
No.
John, do you have any updates on this application?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one fairly minor update. You'll see that the recommendation reads that planning permissions recommended to be granted. But within that recommendation, it does say, as regards the submission of amended plans to address minor design issues, just to let members know that we've had those plans in. They're fine. They do address the concerns that we had. So our urban design colleagues have raised no objections. However, you will note that we've still got an outstanding consultation as regards flooding. Information has been provided. That's out to consultation. We're waiting for a response. Could I request that if members were minded to approve this application, that it would be then delegated to officers in consultation with Chair, Vice Chair, on the basis that the lead local flood authority raised no objections, and also on the proviso that if they did raise objections, then we would bring the application back to committee for further discussion with yourselves. Thanks, Chair.
Right. Thank you, John. We do not have any objectors registered to speak. We have the applicant's agent, Mr. Sedgwick, and Mr. Vauxhall, who will speak if required. So do members have any questions? No? No questions? Councillor Trow?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'd very much welcome the building of 10 new council houses, social housing, and I would like to just move that we proceed to approve the recommendations.
Thank you.
Attached, and
Thank
the
you.
delegation as suggested by John.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Yes, Chair, I'll second it.
Right. Councillor Davies. Right, in that case, then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So the motion is to approve the application as per the recommendation in the report, which is subject to the receipt of comments from the local flood authority. Chair, are you voting for, against, or abstaining?
Before we go to vote, Steph, is committee okay with it coming back to Chair and Vice Chair to sign this application off once the flood authority conditions have been sorted out? Is that correct, John?
Yes, Chair, that's quite correct. I think Councillor Trow did pick up on that, Chair, in his support of the recommendation. It was right on the basis that the lead local flood authority raised no objections. We'll deal with it under delegated powers in consultation with yourself and the Vice Chair. But as I say, if objections are raised, then we'll ensure the application does come back before committee.
Right, okay. Just wanted to make that clear. Okay, in that case, I'll vote for.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ahmed, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Allen, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Chidley, for, against, or abstaining?
4.
Councillor Davis, you seconded the motion. Councillor Dallow, for, against or abstaining?
4.
Councillor Gill, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Hughes, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Hussain, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Jones, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Miller, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstain?
4.
Councillor Sims, for, against or abstain?
4.
And Councillor Trow was the mover of the motion. That application is carried, Chair.
Right, thank you. Application 6414, not, sorry, wrong application. That application is carried. We'll now move on to planning application DC/20/64149. Further temporary approval of microbar use for 1 year with external areas to be open to customers between hours of 1200 to 2100 hours daily, subsequent to temporary approval of planning application DC/18/61502, change of use from a convenience store to a micro bar, drinking establishment, 45 to 47 Regent Road, Albury. Councillor Allen has declared an interest in this application and will now leave the meeting during its consideration. Are there any other members?
Jones has got his hand up, Chair.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Just a point. I'm sitting on licensing and just to see whether I can sit on this as well as the licensing if it comes before me.
That's right.
That's Councillor Jones. If you'd feel more comfortable declaring an interest and withdrawing from the meeting, that's fine.
I'll do that and leave the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other members? Councillor Davies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say as well that I am on the licensing committee, but I am happy to stay.
Thank you.
Gill's got a question.
Councillor Gill?
Hiya, yeah, I'm also licensing, but I am happy to stay as well.
In that case, then I'd like to declare that I'm also on licensing and will stay for the meeting. Right, in that case, Councillor Ralph?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, same here. Councillor, I'm also committee on licensing and I will have to say.
Okay, that will be recorded, Councillor Ralph.
Councillor Dallow's got his hand up.
Councillor Dallow?
Yes, I'm on the licensing committee as well. Declare interest.
Right, thank you. Any other members? We've got you all, I think, now. Right, John, do you have any updates on this application, please?
Yes, Chair, just a very minor one. There is a slight discrepancy in what we call the red line site boundary plan that the applicant submits to show ownership. Just a very minor discrepancy. So we would just tweak the recommendation to say that we would seek an amended ownership plan. It's more of a procedural matter than anything that has a direct bearing on the determination of the application. But other than that, Chair, no, it is just to be clear, it is committee gave a temporary 2-year permission for the use back in 2018. That permission is up for renewal. This is the application for that, and we are recommending a further 1-year temp it is unusual to follow a temporary permission with another temporary permission, but in this instance we felt it was probably prudent, given that previously the external drinking area was only open until 8 o'clock in the evening. Clearly in this case, the application is to extend that to 9 o'clock. We feel that we're in slightly untested waters, so hence the recommendation for just a temporary 1 year approval. Thank you.
Right, thank you, John. In that case, we have the applicant's agent, Mr. Heath Thomas, who will speak if required. Mr. Thomas, do you want 5 minutes to speak, or will you just take questions from members?
I would like to speak, if I may. I will be brief, though.
You have 5 minutes, sir.
I'm very grateful. Can I just say we endorse Carl Mercer's report in terms of his additional seeking an ownership plan. We agree that, and I've already sent a copy to Mr. Mercer for us to agree post this meeting if the committee are with us. But we support his recommendation. Of course, in discussions with him, it would have been recommendation for a permanent planning permission had we maintained the 8 p.m. use of the external area. It's only because we seek that 1 additional hour that we accept a temporary planning permission would be suitable. We accept and would invite monitoring of the use of the external area in that hour period. And my clients are actually confident that they can demonstrate that they don't give rise to noise, nuisance or disturbance as might be suggested. You've had 3 representations to the application. Can I just comment very briefly on those? Firstly, in terms of highways, my clients have received no complaints in the last 2 years in terms of highways. My clients instruct me that very few customers, in fact, drive to the premises because it is such a local community drinking establishment. They do put notices, prominent notices, asking their customers or reminding their customers to park responsibly. And not once has any local resident come into the premises speaking to the local owner to say that individuals are parking irresponsibly. And he tells me very much so that had anyone contacted him, he would have, of course, made an announcement to customers in the premises. These are premises, they only accommodate 60 people. And in terms of premises license, for those that sit on the licensing committee, there is no application for the licensing committee. This is already covered within the existing premise. I'm pleased to say that there is no objection to the application from the Highways Department. And what I would be submitting that there's no unacceptable impact on the highway or public safety as a result of this application. In terms of noise, again, my client has received no complaint either from the noise pollution team, the public health team rather for your local authority, or indeed from any local resident to say that there's any concern about noise relating to these premises. That's no neighbour contact with them at all. And in terms of that, it's a local community hub in terms of its location. There are other operators there. There are 2 hairdressers, a nail bar, a nicer supermarket and a chip shop, all of which draw individuals to that central community hub. So it cannot be said that all persons present are there for Tivy Ale, and neither has any direct evidence been brought before you. In terms of the correspondence, there's one mention of a hog roast. Can I say there's ever been one hog roast at these premises? And that was over a year ago. And there's nothing certainly recent that's been brought to your attention. And just finally, on the point of crime and antisocial behaviour, then can I just remind the committee that West Midlands Police have no objection to the application. None of the representations that have been made can be attributed to my client's premises in any way. There's no direct evidence that supports any proposition about crime or antisocial behaviour. And again, my client has built a good working relationship with West Midlands Police. In the 2 years that he's operated, West Midlands Police have not been required to attend his premises to discuss or raise any concerns of crime or antisocial behaviour relating to his premises. He has a good relationship with the local officers who patrol in the vicinity. He has conversations with them on a weekly basis. And in all of those conversations, again, no concern has ever been raised. So I think that very much supports, from my client's perspective, a submission on our behalf to members of the committee that the temporary planning permission be granted. Unless you have any questions, Chair, that is my submission to the committee.
Right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Do any members have any questions for Mr. Thomas or any officers? Any questions, please? No? In that case, then, can we move to a motion? Can I have a motion from the committee, please? No? In that case,
Could I move a motion that we propose, that we agree for the proposal to go ahead?
Right, and the seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Oh.
Right, thank you. In that case, I'll hand over to Stephanie to take the vote.
Can I just clarify with the mover and seconder that you're moving the recommendation as set out in the published report?
Yes.
That's Councillor Chidley.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move to the vote then. Chair, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Miller's put her hand up, Chair.
Sorry.
Councillor Miller's put her hand up.
Oh, Councillor Miller?
I just want to say that there's subject to receipt of an amendment plan showing the correct red line boundary is kind of like an amendment that John was proposing, and I think the recommendation should be based on that. Yes?
Right. It will be, Councillor. That amendment has been published with on CMIS along with the rest of the papers, so that has been published.
Well, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller.
Councillor
John?
Yes, sorry, Chair, just to pick up on Councillor Miller's point, the agent has confirmed that the details have been sent through to the case officer as well this evening. So, as I say, it was more of a procedural matter that rather than anything that was fundamental to the determination of the application. But certainly we can cover that off as part of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Councillor Ahmed, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Allen has not been left the meeting. Councillor Chidley.
She proposed.
Councillor Sharon Davis, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Dallu, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Gill, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Hughes, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Hussain, for, against or abstain?
Abstain.
Councillor Jones, for, against or abstain? Councillor Jones left the meeting.
Yeah.
Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Miller, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstain?
For.
And Councillor Trow, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Chair, that vote's carried. The application's approved.
So that's application 64149 has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of the committee.
Thank you. We now go to planning application number 9, DC/20/64152, proposed development of 152 2, 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings and 82 1 and 2 bedroom apartments together with associated roads, car parking, open space and associated works. Land at West Bromwich Street, Albury. No members at this stage have indicated that they've been lobbied. So can I just ask committee, has anyone been lobbied? I take that as no.
I can just pause for 1 second to just make sure that Councillor Allen is back.
Yes, we're just waiting for the return of Councillor Allen and Councillor Jones. They're there, both there. So, Councillor Allen, Councillor Jones, did you hear me present the next application details?
Yes, Chair.
You did, so I don't need to repeat them again.
Councillor Hussain has left the meeting, Chair.
Councillor Hussain has left the meeting, right, thank you. Right, John, we go to you for any updates, please.
Okay, yes, thank you, Chair. I've got several updates. Firstly, members, you'll note that the first part of the recommendation reads that clarification was being sought regarding highway access into part of the site, and also colleagues from Public Health had got 1 or 2 queries around the submitted air quality assessment. I'm pleased to report that the information that was outstanding has been provided, and both highway colleagues and Public Health colleagues are happy to support the proposal now. You will also note, members, it's quite important that the application, because it is a departure, the site is allocated for retail leisure type uses, and clearly we've got a housing proposal. It is a departure, so it will need to be ratified at full council in the fullness of time. And the only other outstanding matter at the moment is around affordable housing. The applicant has submitted quite a detailed viability assessment, and of course we always send these viability assessments off for an independent review. That review is being undertaken at this moment by the district valuer. In addition to that, we want to expand on condition 6. Condition 6 says a levels plan, but we would like further information in terms of a cross-section drawing to show the site in relation to the public highway, because we think there might be a need for retaining walls, but until we see cross-section drawings, we're not entirely clear on that, but we can cover that off by condition. And then finally, members, you will notice that right at the end of the recommendation, we're recommending that permitted development rights are removed. As you know, the legislation allows householders to do certain things to the property without applying for planning permission. In this instance, Class A, B, D and E have been clarified. Class A relates to extensions to the house. Class B relates to roof alterations, Class D porches, and Class E is buildings in the rear garden. None of those can take place without the submission of a planning application. Other than that, Chair, that's all I've got to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. We have Mr. Nick Bubbalo. I always had problems with that name. Applicant's agent will speak if required. Would you like to speak, Nick, or will you just take questions from members?
Chair, I'm quite happy to take questions from members.
Thank you. So do any members of the committee have any questions? Councillor Allen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously we've had numerous applications for this site over the years. Some very fanciful, some very practical, and it's nice to see something that's going to give us just a good brand, lot of houses. But is it going to happen? What's the time scale once if we approve this tonight and everything goes forward? Are we going to get an idea of anticipated build on site, anticipated first release of houses? That's the key. we've had this a number of times. I would like to see something that will actually really happen for the first time in since Cuxton and Gerard knocked down their factory.
Councillor, I can assure you this will take place. That's why the applicant has put a fairly full, detailed application in. As to the precise timescales, quite obviously, I can't comment on that, but they are very keen for the permission to be delivered, and they will deliver this as a viable housing scheme on this site, which will no doubt contribute to the needs of the housing needs of the borough and support Albury Town Centre.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Councillor Trow and Councillor Jones.
Councillor Trow.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I think I would just like some sense of sorts of considerations that were taken into account on design quality. In terms of the council's own ambitions, ambition 8 in the council's vision is about just to create distinctive towns and neighbourhoods and communities that are celebrated for their successful community life and leisure and entertainment. And this is in the town centre or next to the town centre. It's helping us to redefine the ways, what is Oldbury and the centre of Oldbury. I'm just thinking if there was awareness of that in the design thinking, if areas like, and I'm a little anxious about the suggestion that the viability of social housing's inclusion at the 25% rate or at the required rate may be a problem, because I do think it's a very important thing that our town centres are populated by the kind of mix of people that represent Sandwell, and that they have a sense that this is a place that they own. And I also just finally, on the same theme of that vision, the council's vision, I just wonder whether in terms of any kind of green space or outdoor space, in terms of, we have ponds that are included in the design, I think, but I'm not clear. You'd have to help me with it, just in terms of what scale of open space or communal space is included in this kind of development to create that sense of community.
Councillor Trow, we engaged very early on with your urban design officers in several pre-application meetings. We put various schemes together. We listened to them. We reacted to them in a positive way. Many of the issues that they raised, we took on board. And so effectively, this scheme does reflect the council's policy and urban design strategies and vision. In relation to affordable housing, we put the scheme together on the basis that you'll appreciate it's a very difficult site in terms of viability and ground conditions. There are a number of mine shafts, and the industrial legacy obviously will require a significant amount of money to remediate that. We put the site together on the basis that, and have had that assessed against a viability statement, which shows that it can't sustain affordable housing. But I know that the applicant, Lovells, have got a registered housing provider on board, and the scheme has been designed so that given that they have now recently got approval from the Combined Authority for grant aid, that there will be an element of affordable housing going into the scheme supplied by a registered housing provider.
Thank you, Mr. Bubblelow. Councillor Jones, you have a question.
Yeah, presumably this is the Junction 1 site, which has been up for development for many years, and many false dawns. And I think you've answered most of the questions that I'd like to ask, and Councillor Trow about affordable housing. But as Councillor Allen said, the viability of the site needs to be that we can actually then deliver on a new development for the new people of Oldbury to come in there and to make sure that it's a good quality development, so that we can actually then go forward. So you've assured me that you have some big players, Lovells and another social housing provider, and I know that they've done a lot of work in other areas of the borough to deliver social housing as well. So I think you've already answered the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, can I ask for a motion from the committee, please?
Councillor Miller's got a hand up.
Who?
Councillor Miller.
Councillor Miller?
Hi, just quickly, and it's on the same theme, but it's not repetitive, I don't think. So this is going to be a housing development that is mainly privately. You buy on there and there's some social rent or some renting. What's just
there is both a mix of tenure in terms of market-led housing and in terms of the mix of houses in terms of 4, 3 and 2-bedroom houses as well as apartments. And there will also be a registered housing provider partnering the main developer to supply a number of affordable houses.
Which is not specified in terms of percentage as yet.
I don't know the precise percentage. I know that the scheme was redesigned with the view to being able to be delivered without having to go to a redesign with that registered housing provider.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dallow, Chair.
Councillor Dallow? Councillor Dallow?
Yeah, I welcome this report because this site, when they're empty from around about 20 years. So with that, I think there are a lot of applications came, but nobody come forward. I move the application to be approved.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please?
I'd like to second that, Councillor Chidley.
Thank you. Can I move to Stephanie to take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the motion is to approve the application with the conditions as set out in the published report. So, Chair, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
Most certainly for.
Councillor Ahmed, for, against or abstaining? Councillor Ahmed?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, for, against? Thank you. Councillor Chidley seconded the motion. Councillor Sharon Davis, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Dallow moved the motion. Councillor Gill, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Hughes, for, against, abstain?
For.
Councillor Hussein's left the meeting. Councillor Jones, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Miller, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Rowe, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Sims, for, against or abstain?
For.
And Councillor Trow, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you, everyone. That vote is carried. The application is approved. Right, I'd just like to make one comment that I welcome this development and will be very glad to see it completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 10, planning application DC/20/64215, proposed 15-metre high monopole, wraparound cabinet at base and associated ancillary works, land at Garrett Street, West Bromwich. Councillor Miller has reported that she has been lobbied by the applicant and local residents in respect of this application. Has there anyone else been lobbied? No? Okay. John, are there any updates to this application, please?
Chair, there's nothing to add to the recommendation. Thank you.
Right, thank you. We have no applicant or objector registered to speak. Do committee have any questions for officers? No. In that case,
Yeah, I've got, have we got a picture of what this looks like?
Yeah.
so there is a picture of the location on screen, if you can see that, Councillor Jigley.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what a 15-metre high monopole looks like.
Right. Do we have a picture, John?
Chair, I was just looking through the agenda papers on page 147. There is a picture of what the monopole would look like. The context we have there with that drawing is a fence and trees, so it really isn't put it into that much of a context. But I mean, 15 metres is probably, well, I don't know, a 3 or 4 story building, Councillor. To be fair, the applicants have reduced the height of the proposal. Originally it was 20 metres, and it would be painted green as well to try and blend in a little bit more with its surroundings. And we have got a backdrop of open space as well. I think the nearest properties are on Garrett Street, and they're over 30 metres away.
Okay, thank you, John.
Any further questions? No? In that case, can I ask the committee for a motion, please? Anyone to propose the motion? Councillor Allen?
Yes, Chair. We've obviously had issues with these masts over many times, and they always prove to be not an issue at all once they're in there. So it's almost like the old telegraph poles we used to have that people were happy with in the past. So I'd like to propose that we go with the recommendation as laid out, Chair.
And Councillor Davies?
Yes, Chair, I would just like to second the recommendation.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor. I'll hand over to Steph to take the vote then.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation in the report is that approval is required and granted. So, Chair, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Ahmed, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Allen, move the recommendation. Councillor Chidley, for, against or abstaining?
I'm just reading on here, sorry about this, and it's got conclusions and summary of reasons for the recommendations. It's got about the new 5G installations are required as part of a nationwide proposals to upgrade and improve mobile network coverage. It is my view that the proposed 15-metre high monopole wraparound cabinet at base could be accommodated in this area and would not have a significant detrimental impact in visual amenity in the area. So what does that mean in relation to 5G? Is that what this is for? Is it for 5G?
Chair, if I may come in, yes, it's all part of the government's push to roll out 5G across the country, Councillor Chidley. They're interesting applications, these, because legally we can only judge them on sighting and appearance, because quite often, you've probably seen in the press yourself, a lot of issues and concerns have been raised around health issues, but the government are quite categoric that the 5G installations do not pose a health issue, and to the extent that we as planners, under this particular part of the legislation, we cannot take health into consideration. So it's just a question of the sighting and appearance. In this instance, as I say, the applicants have reduced the height of the structure proposed, and it's away from housing. Whilst there is the backdrop of open space, it is quite close to the Carter's Green traffic island as well. So that gives you a sort of flavour of the context in which the monopole would sit, and on that basis, we are happy to support the proposal.
Thank you, John.
Continue the vote, Chair.
In that case, because of the 5G implication, I'm voting against it.
Okay. Councillor Dalu, are you for, against or abstaining? Councillor Dalu? Your microphone's turned off.
Shall we come back?
I'll come back to you in a minute, Councillor Dalu. Councillor Gill, for, against or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Dalu, can you hear me? For, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Hussein's left the meeting. Councillor Jones, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Mabina, for, against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Miller, for, against or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstain? Councillor Ralph, your microphone's turned off. Councillor Ralph, can you hear me? I'll come back to you. Councillor Sims, for, against or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Trow, for, against or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ralph, for, against or abstain? Councillor Ralph, your microphone's turned off. Councillor Ralph? Councillor Ralph, can you hear me? Your microphone's turned off. Councillor Ralph? Chair, should we take that as an abstain?
Yeah.
The vote's carried anyway, the application is approved.
Right, thank you. Right, so DC/20/64215 is approved. Agenda item 10, applications determined under powers delegated to the Director, Generation and Growth. This report is for noting and sets out the decisions taken by officers since the committee last met under the delegated powers set out within the Council's constitution. And John, if you can send our thanks and well done to all the officers that have worked on delegated powers this month.
Well, thank you, Chair. It is appreciated, and the team do a great job. Thank you.
Item 12, decisions of the planning.
Councillor Allen and Councillor Allen got their hands up.
Oh, Councillor Allen?
Yeah, just before we get to the end of the meeting, the two applications that I stood down on, I'd like, could you let me know how you got on? Have we got on with those?
Right. The TBL bar was granted. They were both approved.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
All right. Councillor Ahmed?
Chair, just to let you know, I just had a phone call from Councillor Rowe. His tablet is playing up, so he's gone offline or something. So I don't know.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, okay. Item 12, decisions of the Planning Inspectorate. This report is for noting and informs the Committee of the outcome of appeals that have been made to the planning inspectorate by applicants who were unhappy with the committee's decision to refuse planning permission. And I believe that was overturned, wasn't it, John?
Yes, Chair, there was just the one application, land at the rear of Sean Dolan Close up in Rowley. And yeah, fortunately, the planning inspector dismissed the appeal.
Right, thank you. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance and contributions. And do we have the date of next month's application meeting?
5th of August, Chair.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, John. So hopefully we'll see everyone on the 5th of August. Thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right, thanks, folks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.